Hello, welcome to the 2019 National North American Scrabble Championship in Reno, Nevada. This is David Koenig, and I'm here with Chris Grubb, and we're going to be watching the top board of the CSW competition, where we have Jesse Day and David Whitley about to square off. Are you with me, Chris? Ooh, the interwebs. So let's see. We've got the first tiles. I believe it is Jesse Day starting. And he's got a lot of consonants with a blank and a Z. I'm looking at this, and it's one of these situations where even though he's got some good promise here, he's not going to be able to make a very strong play with Z to start the game. So I would consider a play like just tall to clean out a lot of consonants and allow himself to get a big play with Z, possibly a bingo on the next turn. Nothing else is jumping out to me other than just tall. I mean, there are some people who might favor trading in a situation like this, but I would think that doing a Quackle simulation here would actually give you a pretty objective view of things in this case. It's probably comes down to more mathematics than style at this point. Interesting, he is thinking about burning the blank with Zilla, which seems quite reasonable because even though you do burn the blank, that NT leave is quite a good one. So that's going to be a quick 46 points to jump out to there. So yeah, I'm impressed. I wasn't thinking about burning the blank in quite that way, but it actually makes a lot of sense given how strong the NT leave is there. Chris, it appears, is having some audio trouble and not able to get picked up right away. We're going to work on that. So for the meantime, it's just me here. And we had a quick response from Zilla of Y, which is a very nice scoring play, making the H hook there and scoring quick. Let's see, what is that? 33 points, I think, if I counted it correctly. All right, so I'm trying to see Jesse's letters, but he's got his hands over it, so it's hard to see. Looks like he's throwing down Barneyest for the first bingo of the game. So burning that blank worked out well for him. He drew a great bingo rack anyway, and double doubles with Barneyest to take a sizable lead here, considering he started out with a 46-point play and now gets a bingo of another, let's see, about uh, 74 points if I'm counting right. Oh, I'm sorry, it's double double, so it's more than that. It's going to be 86 points. All right, we're trying to get Chris back and on the audio here. Chris, are you with me now?
Still on standby. Now I'm deck. Now I am back on the air.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Fantastic. So yeah.
So catching up, Jesse just bingoed with Barneyest after burning the blank on the previous turn, and now has a pretty sizable lead. So let's see. We've got Headages as a possible bingo for David if he had an E to play through, but he does not have that. Let's see. I'm thinking something like bagheads. That's not quite a word, but there's something close to that that reminds me of.
There's bunheads.
That's true. I was probably thinking of ragheads and ragades, the anagram of that. Those are the only two that makes along with headages. But unfortunately for him, none of them quite fit because the R is partially blocked. So David's got to think about a way of scoring here. But one thing he has that's nice for him is the SH spot. He can make a vertical play going down or up, actually making LAH, and triple the H in both directions and still leave a pretty good leave. I would consider Hag going down as well. That seems like a very reasonable play, leaving ADES and scoring a good 30-ish points.
That is Quackle's top suggestion at the moment.
Hmm. Yeah, I think there's a good chance we might see that. There is a question of whether he wants to play more dynamically, making an H play going down from the D1 place to score and also tear open the top part of the board. That might have some value in just making the board very dynamic. But no, he's taking what looks like the equity play of Hag, and again, seems like the standard way you would want to play in this kind of situation.
Yeah, another of Quackle's suggestions was Agha from uh, 1D, possibly opening up a new section of the board, but he went with Hag instead.
Okay. Could you update this on the score, Chris?
So on the score, we have a 132 for Jesse, 67 for David, right?
Okay. Yeah, so seems about
So,
reasonable. Jesse's up by about a big bingo here.
yep, it is
And Jesse now
his
has
turn.
some duplicate tiles with those V's. Definitely going to be looking for ways to dump them off and score some points here. Verb is one possibility. Revved, R-E-V-V-E-D. Does he have a good spot for that? Oh, Verve. Very nice play. That plays both V's off at once and scores well, tripling the V, playing off the W right there. And cleans his rack up nicely, leaving the balanced DE. So Jesse seems to be off to a fast start here.
Jesse is often off to fast starts. If my impression is correct, he's the kind of player who likes open boards and high scoring plays because both of these players have impeccable word knowledge at this level. Is there anything uh, we can say about these players' personalities or playing styles that might add insight to this situation?
Well, I think Jesse is a very calm player. He is good at keeping his cool at all times. Oftentimes, he will even play down to the last few moments on his clock and seemingly still be cool as a cucumber. So, David is looking to play off his FA and leave the DATES leave. Again, angling for a bingo here, which seems like a reasonable try if he doesn't actually have a way to get a bingo on this board, which I'm guessing not. Um, yes, and he makes what is a very good play of FAE. This scores under the Z and leaves exactly the letters he wanted to leave behind. So that's a good 21-point pickup right there.
So far, both players have been very accurate in their choices.
Well, that's what we want to see when we're looking at the top board. Ooh, and David actually has just drawn two T's here, which I think gives him a tested through the E and Verve if it stays open. So we'll see if he's lucky enough to get that one down and get right back in the game.
Jesse might have a difficult decision on this turn. He's a lot of reasonable plays, nothing really clearly standing out as far as I can tell. Quackle suggests Fugio, which is a type of old coin, I believe, starting from the F at C9.
Yeah, Fuji is a very good play. Again, it plays off his most difficult tiles, leaves behind a very good DES, and I think I would not be surprised to see it from him. But I also wouldn't be surprised if he still has other options to consider. I think one thing that good players always try to do is, if they see a good move, look for a better one, and in so doing, try to absolutely maximize the value of those tiles.
Yes, we did see the same word Fugio, which he seems to be going for last evening in the game between Carl Johnson and Will Anderson.
And Jesse presses his lead with Fugio. And now let's hope that David finds his play of attested. And it looks like he's throwing it down quickly. All right, so we're gonna have ourselves a competitive battle here.
Yes, it seems like in the early going, both players are going pretty quickly, or maybe it's just the pressure of the situation. Do you have a view of the clock? I do not seem to have one on my screen.
No, we can't see the clock here, but I can definitely say that when you have a bingo like attested, it's a good chance it's your only bingo on the play, and it's often valuable to get those kind of plays down quickly to save time for the harder strategic decisions, the non-bingo plays, the end game plays. So I'm not too surprised to see David make that move very quickly.
Yes, and indeed that was the only possible bingo on that rack. I might have wondered if statted was a word, but it turns out no, I would have been wrong.
I believe there's stetted with an E, but not statted. So David has himself back in the game there with that bingo, and he drew a pretty balanced rack of EEEFLMT, so he should have some good options for the next turn to keep himself in this. The main question is what Jesse can do to keep the pressure on here.
Yes, the board is quite open, so probably defense is not his top priority. If I was Jesse in this situation, I would probably just be looking for ways to maximize my score and leave, and maybe try to be the next player to bingo. Uh, DIES is probably the best possible leave with these letters. So,
Hmm, I'm not going to quite agree with that. I think that he has to take into account scoring as well as going for leave. He can't necessarily just totally forsake scoring for the bingo here. One possibility, for instance, is IMID, IMID, on top of the TED of attested, which doesn't leave quite as strong a leave as you want it to leave, the ESU, but it's still not a bad one and scores well and takes out some scoring lanes as well. I think he's just got to basically play an equity game here of balancing all the different factors. It's too close a game to radically alter his strategy from playing for basic equity in this particular situation.
Jesse, of course, the runner up at last year's
Okay.
World Scrabble Championship.
So here's a very cute play he could make actually, which is milieu through the L right in the Zilla there. That would make SHE and TAU. But he's going for Ivied, which is another very good choice. Yeah, this looks so Jesse's outplaying me here. He made a play which I think is even better than both the ones I've suggested, and that it scores very well and leaves still a pretty potent MSU combo there. I think this is a good thing to keep in mind is that if you have to have a slight imbalance in vowels and consonants, you usually rather have slightly more consonants than vowels. And also a letter like the M, even though it is not a one pointer, is a very good letter to keep a lot of the time because it still bingos quite a bit and also combines well with lots of other tiles to make good scoring plays.
Yes, and there is a potential M spot at B10, which we may see him use, depending on what he draws.
Well, that's sort of partially blocked by the last play here. Um, Playing MU by
Oh,
itself would, of course, set up the AMU and EMU hooks, which we're not likely to see
yes.
unless it was a really strategic play to do so.
Yes, that
He's
suggestion.
got the G combined with all of these letters actually make two nice bingos, bigamous and subimago, but neither of those start with the G, so it's not going to go down here. Um,
Yeah, there's things like bimanus, which you would need an N for.
or biramus, yeah.
Biramus. Yeah, there is an R, but again, it doesn't quite fit.
So we'll see. I still don't see the extra tiles on David's racket. Oh, now he's drawing them.
Here they
I
come.
wasn't sure if he was still thinking about his play there. So it is Jesse's turn again, and let's see where he's going. There's definitely the possibilities of making plays on the D column next to that B of Barneyest for some points, and there's value in taking that not just to score himself, but also to take that away from his opponent, as it's likely to be one of the bigger scoring spots. But there's also a possibility of plays on row 2 above the IED and IV'd. I think one of the things that often happens is players will first see is there a bingo on their rack, but if not, they will then say, where are the scoring spots on the board, and use that to help them in deciding their plays. So another spot to look for is the ARM spot under ITA and ISM there. ISO, I guess, is also a possibility. So there's a possibility for some underlaps there. I'm not seeing any real killer plays at the moment, but these are the spots you want to be looking for some good scores, possibly.
Yes, I don't recall. Did someone suggest Umbo at 1D yet?
Umbo at 1D is interesting. It's a good play for points and for leave, but it does open up quite a nice lane on row one. I'm not afraid to make a play that opens up the triple if I'm getting a lot of other things out of it, if I'm scoring really well, but Umbo doesn't strike me as a play that scores quite enough to be worth that kind of risk, especially considering the fact that the board isn't hugely open for his opponent to score really well without that spot at the moment. So you're increasing the expected value of your opponent's plays a lot by making a play like that. I might prefer to make a play actually lower down on the D column, not necessarily hitting the double letter on top, but just to keep the board tighter and scoring there and making a few parallel plays. And in fact, that looks exactly what he's doing with Amu. So another nice thing about this Amu play is it does set up the front hooks for Ama and Oma, and Jesse already has an O on his rack, so he might want to follow up on the next turn by making another parallel play there to keep on adding the points.
Yes, or even a back hook making herb as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's true. He also has the B for Herb, and let's see, what score is it now?
Currently, after Jesse's play, it is 231 to 183 in Jesse's favor. So
Mm-hmm.
about a bingo lead.
Yeah. So this is an interesting situation in that Jesse doesn't want to take any huge risks in opening up a triple, but at the same time, David has some open lines for bingos. He has the IT line where you could put something ending in a S or other letter there. He also has the WE that you could hook down from, as well as hags in the open G or hooking off the Y in the word Y. So as long as David can find a bingo or get to one, he's going to have some lanes to be able to get back in this. He's not desperately far behind, but he's got to find ways to keep scoring well and not fall further back while he is building toward that bingo. I think one mistake some players make sometimes is that they only think about the bingo, don't think about scoring enough points, and then end up just falling too far behind. So let's see. He'd have a medical with an A, but that A in the middle is not really in a good spot for him to be able to use.
Yes, Quackle is suggesting climb.
Yeah, that's a very good play. And
CLIME
he,
at
he's got it
2K.
lined up right now. I think we're likely to see that play. Yeah, climb is excellent. It scores well and takes a big lane there. It's true that Jesse may get a play in response in the top corner, but you can't worry about that too much. You're also turning over lots of tiles, try to get to that other blank, that other S. And the S can be very valuable here for getting bingos down with the hags and fugios and sit hooks.
Yes, Jesse does have the B for Blet as climb goes down, but it doesn't look like he's going to be able to make use of it, at least
Yeah,
not
he would
on
need to
this
have the
turn.
A for an AIDE there to really make use of that B in that spot,
Or
which he
the
doesn't
E.
have. But oh yeah, the I as well, that's right. But he's definitely got to deal with the fact that the Q is sitting on his rack right now. So let's think about how he's going to deal with that here. He might also not make it the highest priority. You might want to make a scoring play first on the top right and then deal with the Q after that. And that is, in fact, what he does. I think this is a good thing to recognize that point that there was no other spot on the board that was nearly as promising as the top right for scoring. So that was actually a higher priority than dumping his Q. He can always get rid of the Q with something like QIS and SAB, for instance, on the next turn. And maybe other better things will develop, but he doesn't have to feel desperate to deal with the Q at the moment. Hmm. David's got an interestingly flexible rack, so it's looking like he's probably not going to bingo. Oh, he does have a bingo. He can make Silo Knight through the Y and WHY. That's a tricky find, starting a bingo with the X.
Hmm.
Let's see if he can actually find that spot.
Yeah, because there aren't a whole lot of appetizing X spots on the board right now.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
guessing he doesn't see it because of the way he's got his OX lined up there, like he wants to play off those two tiles.
yeah, if he doesn't see it, I suppose it may not be unreasonable to play something like Dex, hoping to use the I to form XI on the follow-up play.
Where do you want to play Dex? Oh, I see what you're talking about. Yeah, Docs is also good now. That was just added. I
Oh,
think
I
that's
did
what he's
not know
looking
that.
at.
Yeah, you're right, it is. Yes,
Hmm.
Docs would be superior to Dex.
Yeah. Obviously, the Bingo Silent Knight would be the best play here, but we're assuming that he doesn't see it right now and thinking about what else he might do. Um, I think Docs is reasonable, but he decides to play it a little more safely with Oxy in the middle. And there are pros and cons of that. He's sort of blocking the board a little bit, taking away the hook for sevens off of the Y, but he may be reasoning that there are enough other openings right now that he doesn't need that particular one. And he draws two vowels, and he has Etiolin now. And Jesse has a nice spot for Kide, tripling the Q and taking out that lane. Now, David really can't waste his time. He needs to find his Etiolin bingo at making WEE. It's the only spot I see at the moment for it. I'm not sure if he has anything else that goes down here. So in the end, Xilonet would have been a nice bingo, but he actually, if he hits the bingo here, won't have lost that much because he will have scored decently well with the X and then hit his bingo a turn later in a way that's actually a little safer than the original Xilonet would have been.
Etiolin is one of those high probability bingos, which happens to be Collins only. So for our North American players who may have switched lexicons in the recent past, it may not be the most immediate of finds. I think Whitley can
Yeah.
figure it out though.
So Xilonet, I believe, also, at least last I knew, was Collins only. I've not kept up with the most recent TWL changes. So it's also one that might not be familiar to people who play a lot of TWL.
Yes, if memory serves, you can also spell xylonite with a Z in front. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think it's listed as a misspelling of Xilonet with the X.
Yeah, that's where there are a few words in the dictionary which are, by definition, misspellings of other words, oddly enough.
So could we get a score update, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see. After our most recent play, we have a 61 plus 50, what's like 74-point lead for Jesse Day. He's slowly managed to expand his advantage. So it's almost a two bingo deficit. Right now, one bingo from David
Ooh.
will equalize the score, but Jesse will still have the advantage because he'll have the tempo.
Hmm.
And also, probably a better rack because David will be getting random tiles.
Well, David just played LEI, so he missed his Etiolin bingo. So that's two turns in a row that he's missed a bingo with Xylonite
That is
and
unfortunate.
Etiolin, and it is. And I'm afraid it's probably going to be too much to come back from at this point because Jesse has a big swank play on the left-hand side there. And at this point, yes, he really is getting into two bingo range territory, and I think that this game is getting out of hand. So yeah, one thing to keep in mind in a typical Scrabble game among experts is that they play through the bag quickly. You're only getting maybe 12 turns in a game on average. So you really need to take advantage of those opportunities, not miss those shots when you get them, if you want to stay in the game against a world-class expert like Jesse. There's not a lot of forgiveness there.
Yes, one of the differences between the Collins lexicon and the traditional North American official word list is it has about 30% more words, which means that there are always going to be a lot of scoring possibilities, a lot of variance, a lot of opportunities to come back. But from this deficit, it looks like this one may be in the bag. I think, yeah, David will definitely need to bingo twice. Uh,
Well, there's two ways of looking at it. One is that more scoring possibilities mean more coming back, but it also means that the player with the lead can keep scoring and piling it on. Um, so Jesse's got a flexible enough rack and a good enough lead that he's not going to fall uh, too much off of his lead, is likely in this situation. So I think Jesse's a very heavy favorite at this point. And David is now in one of these racks where he's got mostly low scoring tiles and seemingly no bingo, so he's got to lose some time. He might want to make a play. I think what he's looking at is DOO and sided, CIDED, which is a totally reasonable play in terms of trying to create some levers on the board and leave a good bingo leave. But again, it means he's settling for a play that's scoring in the 20-ish range and going to have to hope to get the bingos later. And he's just running out of time here. Hmm. Another possibility would be DOL and NURD over on the left-hand side, which is, you know, six of one, half dozen of the other. I guess there's a DOO and diff on the left side, trying to set up the Dune, DOON, and other hooks like that on the bottom row. It's kind of a desperate play. Jesse, of course, has R's, so he'll be able to make a door play there to shut the door if David were to try that one. I think whichever way you look at it, there's no play he's going to make here that's going to really radically change his chances.
yes, of course, he could try to open up the left column
Hmm.
to go for a triple triple, but there's no way that Jesse's not going to
Yeah.
block that at this point. So probably at best, uh, he can hope to maybe force Jesse into a defensive play while he hopes to draw his bingo.
No, so I think what he did was actually the right thing, although he unfortunately drew two more O's. He didn't need to play something like DOO on the right hand side because he already had the open D to play down from. And that's a spot that's likely to stay open for a while because Jesse is unlikely to block that play without creating other things. Whereas if he played DOO himself, he's sort of just inviting Jesse to make a play down from the O to take away the triple lane from him. So there's a difference between a spot that is open very temporarily, the opponent can quickly close down, and one that's likely to stay open for a while. And I think David judged that he wanted to just make a temporizing scoring play, hope to draw better bingo lines, letters, and know that he still had a few lanes that had some chances to stay open on the next turn. But unfortunately for him, the 2-0 draw is really dooming him here. He's not going to be able to score much on the next turn. He's going to have to fish again. Um, while Jesse, so if I was Jesse here, I would be looking at making long plays down from the WE on the K column because you don't really need to spend a lot of time building toward a bingo. What you want to do in a case like this is end the game sooner and get to the good tiles before the opponent and shut down the lanes. So, you know, if he had a decent play, I'm seeing like Truer that breaks up his rack a little more than I would like and leaves only vowels. Although depending on the vowel consonant, uh, bone remainder in the bag, a play like that is not totally crazy. But if you could make a long play from the G going across is another
Something like
possibility.
Guerite.
Yeah, yeah, plays like that I think are actually quite reasonable to make in this situation. Let's see what he's doing. He's picking up the U and thinking about something here.
Yes, arm is poised over the
Hmm.
board, and yes, Guerite, it looks like is
Looks
coming
like
down.
he's choosing Guerite here. So, Chris, you correctly predicted Jesse's move. And yeah, I'm very happy with this play. He says, like, I'm not going to mess around and try to fish for my own bingos. I don't need to bingo again to win. I just need to make sure that David has not enough turns to get down a lot of bingos. Even if he bingos once, it's not going to be enough to get him back in it. So I want to end the game as fast as possible where he can't get multiple bingos. The other thing to consider, and you're seeing this now with Jesse, is that when the opponent has been fishing a lot, like David has, he likely only has low point tiles, so those high point tiles like the J are still in the bag. And playing long can often give you a chance to draw into those high point tiles and score with them while the opponent is still fishing.
Indeed, Jesse did pick up the J, which could give him a little bit of insurance. So even if David were to bingo here, he has a good chance of coming back for another high scoring play. A bit of a frustrating game, I would suspect, from David's perspective. Probably even more so once he looks at the racks in the post-mortem.
Yeah, I mean, Xylanite is a tricky one to see, even if you know the word, and it's very natural to think about fishing off the X in that situation. But again, Etiolin is the high probability one he really needed to find to have a chance in this game, and once those were gone, there's not really much of a chance at this point. He does pull a blank now, so he will probably get a late bingo. But you see, this is the difference. If he'd gotten one of those other bingos and then gotten that blank, then he would have a much better chance to get to a second bingo, and that would be the type of thing that would actually give him winning chances in this game.
Quackle's suggestion was to play OO and then the new OK
Uh,
at B7 last turn.
that is a very crazy play, and then it opens with that triple line right there.
Yeah, it probably would not have worked out well because of the J that Jesse is holding.
Yeah, you need to be careful with Quackle that if you just ask the player for suggestions, it's often not taking into account defense and reasonable things like, do I open a triple and just give my opponent easy points? That's where you really need to use a simulator or the championship player to get a more meaningful suggestion that will often filter out plays like that just recklessly give the opponent easy scoring spots.
Yes. I think David needs to be a little reckless at this point if he needs a chance to win, but that might be even a bit too far.
Yeah, I think some players start bleeding a lot of spread in situations where they think they just have to recklessly open things up. And there's a difference between making a play like OO there that just gives one triple, opens nothing else, and that obviously the opponent's going to take away and outscore you on, and plays that actually create some sort of fork and create multiple lanes. So for instance, if you look at that E in Guerite, obviously the E is a nice spot to play through for a bingo, but if you were able to make a play that you played slightly above and below it, you might be able to create a situation where you create a lane to hook on the right. I guess there's not quite enough space to hook on the right there. But you see what I'm getting at is that you make a play that creates openings on both above and below or that kind of thing to give yourself chances that the opponent can't easily block. So another example of that, for instance, would be if you could make a play on the left-hand side off of the O in Fugio, like a three-letter play, where you had a letter that didn't have a front hook. So, for instance, like OVA, OVA. Then you would have the OO that you could hook down on the A column, and you could also play through the A in the triple triple line. That's an example of a forking play where the opponent can't cover everything at once. Obviously, that is hypothetical here. Both V's are already gone. I'm just talking about the general concept. But Jesse is taking his time now, and that's a good thing to do here. He recognizes he was able to play fast enough early in the game, get a good lead, and now he can really be thoughtful in maximizing his situation and minimizing David's comeback chances. You see him rearranging his letters a particular way. It's not quite clear to me what he's aiming for here, although I'm curious.
Yes, by a fairly large margin, the computer has 10A GJU as the top play, but of course he's not going to do that because
No,
he doesn't want to open any triple possibilities.
he's never going to make a play like that. This is where you have to use the computer with a grain of salt. You want to be looking at winning percentage more than equity, and you often want to be simming more than two moves once you get late in the game and the bag is nearly empty. Jet is a very natural play that just scores some points with a J, takes out some bingo lanes, and David will still get a bingo here, but it's not going to be quite enough to get him in it likely. Intranet is the play. So what is going to be the score after David's intranet bingo here?
Let's have a look.
Sorry, we're here in Seattle and there is a little bit of street noise, so we're getting a little bit of extra flavor added to the game.
Drama happening as usual. Let's see. Yes, the score at this point 401 for Jesse, 347 for David.
All right. So yeah, he's within a bingo distance now, but I think at this point the problem is that he's running out of time, he's running out of board, and without an S to hook on intranets, for instance, it's going to be hard to get something down. Now, I think there is still one S unseen, right? I see three on the board.
Yeah, now surprises can happen. I'm thinking of the dramatic final game in the championship between Nigel Richards and uh, Joel Sherman last year, where Joel was down by about 2 bingos and managed to uh, empty the bag in such a way that he picked up uh, a bingo that was unblockable in 2 different spots. So something like that could happen here,
Yeah,
but time is short.
it's worth keeping in mind. I think Jesse's still a pretty strong favorite, but it's worth keeping in mind that I may have underestimated David's comeback chances here. I think one thing that David did well was he recognized he had the good kind of board for comebacks where he could slowly maneuver toward his bingo and Jesse wouldn't have a lot of huge scoring plays. And that was why it was probably better not to do things like recklessly open a triple, because Jesse had to just sit around and putter himself for a while and he wasn't able to get a whole lot of points off of the J. So when David finally did hit his bingo, he was closer to striking range here.
Yes, unfortunately, David drew back some of those O's he threw in the bag earlier. Unbeknownst to him, there is still an S unseen. But
Yeah, it
not a
looks like
lot of possible bingos.
it looks like there are 9 tiles in the bag now, but there is an S and a blank, and actually they may be the last two in the bag at this point if I'm reading this correctly here.
I believe there's not a blank left because the first blank
Oh,
used
I'm
on
sorry.
Zilla on
Yeah,
the opening.
you are correct. I was trying to look at the annotation page and misreading it there. Um,
Yeah, is there
but there is the
anything
S
that
unseen.
with that pool, let's see, that um, David could possibly hit? Looks like the other tile in the bag is the N. So there's an N and an S unseen to both players.
Hmm.
I don't. Nothing jumps out at me.
Yeah, the problem is that even though the letters are decently bingoable, there aren't a lot of letters to play off of and through. There's the D and attested is about the only way you can get an 8 down here, and I am not seeing anything that's actually going to play off of that D. So I'm sure Jesse is sniffing things out here, and oh, did he actually make that play of go?
Oh,
That's very
interesting. So
nice.
he's noticed that he has the case E. I don't know why people say case E. The final E
Hmm.
in the game belongs to Jesse. So he's
So what he
probably
was
going to
hoping to do
play.
was actually draw one of those O's for propone, but he did give the Wygo hook here.
Smart decision by David to block that.
Yeah, so in this particular case, it ends up being a matter of bookkeeping. Jesse had a chance to get a late bingo, but it ends up maybe costing him a little bit of spread, but it's not going to change the overall result here. One cute word he has now is unpope off of the U in YOU. Not a big scoring play, but a fun word. And he makes penne, the pasta. Yeah, one thing that often happens when you have two scoring tiles in the end game is that you'll often score best by actually splitting them up and leaving yourself one for the final turn. So, for instance, here he has Trop as a possible outplay to the other triple. And we'll see these players wrapping this up in just a moment here, but looks like Jesse will be on the top board again in round 30, which will be the last game before the top two competitors go to a best of three final. David's still taking his time, and that's something considerable to see here. Obviously, he knows he's already lost the game, but I think a lot of Scrabble players have pride in playing the game well and finding their best plays and making good scores, and you'll often see some of the better players, even when the game is already lost, thinking methodically on those final plays to still demonstrate their skill and make their plays.
especially when their game is being broadcast live over the internet.
Hmm. A good point from the YouTube chat is that there's a chance, depending on the results of the other games, that Jesse may already have clinched his way into the final match after this game, which means that we may not see Jesse on the top board. We may see it between the next two competitors to see who gets to face Jesse in the final match. But stay tuned. We will let you know that as soon as we do.
So David does have one outplay, which is Oozier
Oh, Seer,
through that
nice.
E on the bottom.
Yeah, I believe that is a Colin spelling of Oozy, O-O-Z-Y, with an S instead. Something like that. Ah, and it looks like he's found it.
Yes. Another possibility is just to simply play off an S to make zillas and verbs.
Hmm. It's a good scoring play. It's really just a matter of math here. You have to count your play plus double the opponent's points, or if you drop the S, count what the opponent's scoring and then minus double your points. And remember that in the end game, the object is not to score the most on this turn, but just have the greatest net score at the end of each of the turns.
Yes. Another Scrabble news. Uh, it looks like Winter has clinched the Coral Gables. What is that tournament called? The one going on in Florida right now, which is sort of the rival nationals, um, which has a smaller field but is happening on the same weekend as us.
That would be the word cup, I think, is what you're referring to.
That would be the one.
So it looks like David is taking his outplay of Oos here.
Yes, and that is the correct decision.
They both played fast enough early in the game that I'm sure he had time to math it out. So, Chris, can we get a final score on the game?
Yeah. So it looks like after our play of Oozier, should be 425 to 389 if I've entered the data correctly.
So congratulations to Jesse. He is in good shape to make it into the final match, and he's been on quite a roll. He was, of course, a finalist in the World Championship last year, and recently I was right there alongside him when he was playing in Thailand at the King's Cup, where he was also a finalist against Nigel Richards. And although Nigel beat him both times, Nigel's a very hard man to beat. He will win most championship matches. The fact that Jesse has been so consistently getting up there to these final matches should tell you something. He's doing something right. And yeah, I feel like I personally learned something from him, especially on the opening play of this game with that burning the blank for Zilla. That really ended up being a good decision for him.
Yeah, speaking of Nigel Richards, you might be wondering why Nigel Richards isn't at the tournament this year, either in the Collins or in the TWL division. And the reason is he's playing in French right now at another Scrabble tournament, which happens to overlap. with nationals.
I
Um,
didn't know that. Nigel did mention to me that he wasn't making it here because of some other conflict, but I didn't get the details on it. That is funny that it's the French language championship. I know it's something that Nigel has been enjoying quite a bit over the years.
yes, the his Scrabble exploits in French, of course, one of the most interesting and otherworldly stories in recent years in Scrabble. The 5-time North American champion in English has also decided to take his shot at French, a language which he does not speak, and he has already won that tournament at least twice and may well be on his way to winning another one. I do not know. You'll have
Well,
to tune into the French language stream of that tournament. I don't think such a thing exists, but it is a big tournament. I heard, according to Le Parisien, that they have over 1,000 players, which might make it the largest tournament in the world, except for possibly the King's Cup. What would you say, David?
mm. Having not attended any of the French events, I can't really speak to their size, but the King's Cup is incredible.
Yeah.
It is on a huge scale, not just because of the number of international players there, but also because there's several thousand Thai school kids playing in a scholastic tournament alongside that main event. And maybe I'll talk about it a little more during the next game, but I think we're going to take a very brief break right now and pick it up. The next game is supposed to start, I think, right after the top of the hour, so it shouldn't be more than 5 minutes off here before we get back to the next game. Stay tuned.
Thank you for listening.